Hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I want to start you off with a fun question that just will kind of get those juices flowing this morning or this afternoon or this evening. It's how healthy is your workplace? And I know that some people are thinking, well, we have a little mold here, or we have a smoker there, or we have some of those things. But I want to talk more about the team than the actual workplace itself. And so I'm honored to be hanging out with Lynn Durham. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. I'm actually really good today.
Awesome.
I'm happy to be here.
That's
Yeah.
good. You are founder of Create Magic at Work. And I think magic, man, it made me think back when I was a kid and, the magic tricks that you could do. So super excited to unpack a bunch of this. So fill us in on what's going on at Create Magic at Work. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I founded Create Magic at Work to bring tools for everyone to the workplace that skill build in emotional and spiritual intelligence, EQ and SQ.
Yeah, well, I'm familiar with EQ. I do a lot of that work myself, but the SQ is totally new to me. So it might be new to some of the people listening. So tell me, what does SQ mean to you?
So SQ, the definition I really like to share is from Cindy Wigglesworth. She developed the 21 skills of spiritual intelligence for the workplace. And it's the ability to make wise and compassionate decisions and maintain inner and outer peace, regardless of the situation you're in.
Holy cow.
Exactly.
I know, right? Okay. Let's unpack that because there's a lot there. That's pretty cool. So go ahead. You were going to say something. Jump in.
Well, I used to laugh a lot when I would share it because it's regardless of the situation. It's like, how is that even possible? But it's not, as long as we skill build in the area, I think we're winning. Sure. And there's a philosopher and a physicist. Her name's Dana Zohar, and she has a ton of work in the SQ, the spiritual intelligence space. And one of the way she frames it is the ability to put your day-to-day concerns aside and operate from a big picture view. Or in SQ, we also say, hey, put your ego aside and operate from that place within you that comes from compassion and wisdom and love, your higher self.
So so compassion is, I'm assuming that there's probably some entrepreneurs right now, Amy, that you can hear their brakes going on because, they're in a cutthroat market or they're in fighting for their lives. There's all these things going on in their life. And now we're saying, hey, just be compassionate, So how do you marry those two together? I'm interested to learn from you on that.
So first, I want to say I've been there. I worked as a corporate executive for years in a very cutthroat sales environment, answering to shareholders. And I had hundreds of employees that I oversaw.
Wow, awesome.
And then I left that space and I went on the entrepreneurial journey where I started my own company, wrote a book, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're slamming on your brakes, saying, how can I be compassionate when I have, all of these numbers I need to hit and do all of these different things that I need to get done. Let me just say that this is the key that you can turn in your life that will take you to the next level as a leader. Because at the end of the day, it's not all about this stuff we need to get done. At the end of the day, it's the ripple effect that we're sending out into the world.
So, and again, I'm learning right along with a lot of our listeners. So I'm thinking to myself, like ripple effect I get, but I'm really busy. So do I have time to be compassionate? Do I have to stop what I'm doing? And, it doesn't come natural for a lot of people, I guess, Amy, it's, it doesn't, compassion may come natural to some, but there's some that, I use the word blind spot a lot. And I think that we all have blind spots and some people just aren't aware of what that is. So, so you were in corporate America. and you had hundreds of people that were, reporting to you. So you knew what that was stress was of, shareholders above you, a team below you, so to speak. And so you were stuck in the middle. How did compassion, how did spiritual, intelligence kind of evolve for you, and walk us through that if you can?
Thank you. That is such a great question. So here's the evolution, right? I was in this cutthroat environment, but at the same time, I felt like my creativity was stifled in the workplace. I wanted to do all of these connecting activities that skill build in EQ and SQ, and I was inundated with quarterly business reviews, Excel spreadsheets,
Sure.
constant sales updates. So I decided to leave my job a year ahead of when I actually did.
Okay.
I planned it out. I didn't tell anyone. And what I did with my team was I utilized all of these activities with them, even though they didn't know it, because when I left my job, I wanted to prove that collaboration over competition wins, and that connecting individuals through seeing the humanity in each other actually improves profitability and productivity. And so I did all these skill building activities, and they didn't know it. I put them all in my book. That's what I did. I did all these field tested activities. And at the end of the day, the data backs it, right? Close work friendships boost employee satisfaction by 50%. Employees feel more engaged if they don't feel lonely and isolated.
Right.
It's all there. But what we run into in the workplace is the selectively data-driven executive is what I like to call them.
Sure. Yep, for sure.
Because they only focus on the metrics that they're comfortable with. And oftentimes it's not the vulnerable, courageous, connecting with another human being metrics that they want to focus on.
Right, exactly.
And that is why I started Create Magic at Work. And that is why I put the activities in my book, it was for that, maybe that executive that is afraid, that doesn't know where to start. So they can grab a little handbook and start. Now, to go to the compassion piece. So here we have the fun activities that a leader can do in the workplace that can connect everybody and improve productivity and profitability, right?
Sure. Okay.
Then if you want to go to the compassion piece, that's the deep inner work that a leader needs to do for themselves. And that's where SQ comes in. You get to SQ by way of EQ. If you've got some self-awareness of your emotions, you've got an emotional management strategy, you can build connections. Okay, you're working on your EQ. SQ is the part where you're like, why am I here? What are my values? What's my life purpose?
Mm-hmm.
What am I leaving behind? So skill 19 in SQ is making wise and compassionate decisions.
Okay.
Every single executive that has taken the SQ21 assessment and done a debrief with me asks me about skill 19.
Mm-hmm.
Hands down. And I love it because it's so encouraging, right?
Sure.
We have these high level leaders and they want to talk about their skill level on making wise and compassionate decisions.
Sure.
Super encouraging. What I find is lately, this is just lately, I don't want to speak in absolutes.
Sure.
But what I'm finding is the leaders either come out on one end or the other of the spectrum. One end, they are not making wise and compassionate decisions for themselves.
Okay.
So they're mistaking leadership with empathy and with, let me give you a real life example, maybe sitting on the phone with an employee venting all day long, being the office ear for everyone.
Sure.
Or taking on all the projects for everyone else so they can have the weekend off, the martyr syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So then that's where you can get into the conversation about making wise and compassionate decisions for yourself, setting boundaries for yourself at work, and taking care of yourself. The other end is, I can't stand this person, or so-and-so just sent me this email that just lit me up,
Sure.
And how do you make wise and compassionate decisions for large groups of people? Maybe you're doing mass layoffs. I've dealt with mass layoffs in my experience multiple times, right? How do you handle that with compassion?
Yeah.
And wisdom? And so that's where you get into just some simple exercises that connect with each other. There's a just like me exercise I like to walk people through. Just like you envision the other person and you say, just like me, this person's trying to experience joy. Just like me, this person's trying to avoid pain.
Okay.
And then you see the commonalities with us just being human.
Gotcha. Well, and I mean, I think it's pretty well proven that you can see a return on investment on your EQ. There's a lot of research out that shows the higher your emotional intelligence is, the higher dollars you're going to make, if that's what you're motivated by. I think it's a lot harder to see, and I'd love to hear your feedback on this. It feels like it would be harder to see what the ROI is on spiritual intelligence. So if you are sitting across from somebody, i.e. me, and I'm saying, you know what, Amy, I get what you're saying, but I need to see an ROI. I need to see the return on this investment that you are asking me to make in myself, in my company, whatever that ROI, whatever the investment is secondary to, I want to see a return on that. How do you coach people in that spot when they're looking for some concrete return on the investment from a spiritual intelligence standpoint?
So understanding really what it is super important, because first off, you don't want to mistake it for religion. It's a faith neutral system.
Sure.
You can be agnostic, you can be atheist, as long as you believe there's a place within you that you can access that comes from wisdom, compassion, love. You can work on the 21 skills of SQ. SQ is something, let me give you a breakdown of what some of the skills are. And you tell, and I'm all, and you tell me. I don't
yeah, you tell me. Yeah.
Sorry,
put it back on me. Good idea. Yeah, you tell me. Love it.
And you tell me, think of this as leaders in the workplace.
Sure.
We cannot move forward without leaders having these skills. Can I be a wise and effective change agent? Skill 18. Can I be a common healing presence? Am I aware that my worldview isn't the only worldview, right?
Sure.
Am I aware of the interconnectedness of life? Can I be a wise and effective teacher? Those are just some examples. Can I put my ego aside and operate from my higher self? As a leader, the way that your energy is ripples out 10 times. It magnifies 10 times to your team.
Okay.
So if you're angry, if you're upset, if you're treating people poorly, if you are not skill building in a way to be a common healing presence, multiply that times 10 with the people around you. And then think of how they go out into the field and treat whoever they're interacting with. And then think of how those people go out and treat whoever they're interacting with. So that is why this is so important, and why I'm so passionate about it is because I'm like, wow, my whole, end of my corporate executive career, I was exploring spirituality at home and then going to work, and I was corporate executive Amy.
Sure.
This actually merges the two for people that are exploring this in a faith neutral way.
Sure.
And it gives you real skills to ground into for the workplace.
Wow. Well, so I'm hearing I don't want to say they're opposites, but I'm going to use that word just for context. I mean, I totally get that entrepreneurs, business owners listening right now want to make wise decisions. So I totally get that. Everybody would love to have that type of wisdom where they just make a decision and people are just enamored right around them. Like, oh my gosh, this guy's phenomenal. This girl's fantastic. But I feel like the wise and that you're using wisdom or wise and compassionate kind of in the same breath. And what do you do if those two on the surface look like they're at odds with each other? Because I can see at times where a wise choice isn't a compassionate choice. And that's, maybe a blind spot for me, but I'd love to understand how those two kind of work together with each other.
Well, first off, I want to say if someone is making a quote unquote wise decision just because they want everyone to say, ooh, he's so wise. Your decision's probably not wise.
Yeah, that's from the ego spot, right? So,
right.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Definitely from the ego.
Yep.
So in that way, they should go together. I know
Sure.
you're talking about polarities here, right?
Yep.
But, or I should say, and, because we're not supposed to say but in polarity. Yes. So, and they do go together. I would argue if you're operating from your higher self, compassion and wisdom should go hand in hand, right? Yeah. I do get what you're saying about that's another skill, complexity of thought and perspective taking. Can you hold opposing views in the same space and create win-win solutions for people?
Sure.
That's another SQ skill. So, when you're talking about Amy, what about the business executives listening and the entrepreneurs listening? If you study quantum leadership, this is what is going to take you into innovation and inspiration is SQ.
Okay. And what I heard, so I wrote down what we use, the term that in the world of DISC assessments, where personality profiling, things like that, we do a lot of that work. They call that like a me conflict, where there's something inside of me that does it one way, but there's also something inside of me that does it a different way. And that conflict can happen when those two forces, obviously aren't in agreement with each other. So, I don't know specifically if those are the same, but I can see where you're looking at something and you're trying to figure out what's the wise choice to make. One choice could be compassion, one choice could be love, but what you're saying is if you operate from that love and compassion, then you're looking at those decisions pretty differently, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. Okay. And it's a skill building exercise every day for us, right? You start with the person that cut you off in traffic.
Yeah. No, that never happened. Come on.
And you reframe, why they cut you off, because you're telling yourself a story in your head anyway. This jerk. So then you reframe that. So it's the weightlifting. There's the 3-pounder. Now can I get to the 50-pounder? Sure. Now can I hold these two opposing views in the same space and somehow figure out a win-win solution for everyone in the organization.
Gotcha.
As an example.
So like what would be a practical application in a business, again, assuming that there's business owners, entrepreneurs listening, and they may have a team of people. And again, prior to this conversation, they have been, thinking about things a little bit different. We're asking them to do a little course correction in their thinking. And so what are a couple of practical, applications that they can use just to kind of test the waters, I want to say, for them?
Okay. So I'll share two things. I'll share one that you can do for yourself.
Okay.
And it almost kind of ties back to EQ. It's just stopping and taking a moment to sit with whatever's going on. It's that emotional management strategy piece, right? Yep. So instead of running to make quick fixes, you stop. Okay. And because I know in that world, it's constant, go, get this done, got this. Put your hand up and say, hold on a second. As a leader, take a breath and sit with whatever uncomfortableness is going on. Say if a mistake comes up.
Sure.
Don't rush to a quick fix. Look for the underlying cause. And that is a tip in being a change agent. We see it all the time on LinkedIn. I'm a change agent, Sure. And it's like, well, okay. So let's talk about that. And what does that mean to you? Yeah, exactly. So there's one tip for yourself you can do as a leader.
Okay.
The other thing is, don't be afraid to start with some sort of connecting activity in the workplace if you haven't done it before. So if you're exploring this and you're kind of like, whoa, I'm seeing the data that human connection actually improves productivity and profitability.
Right. Yep.
And how do I do this? Because my whole life I was groomed to report out numbers.
Right. Yep.
So you don't have to do some crazy deep dive into SQ. Start small.
Sure.
Use business time to ask everybody. I'm sure, you know this with EQ, ask everyone to share something they're grateful for in the beginning of a meeting.
Yeah.
Do some sort of connecting activity during company time. When I was writing my book, I asked my employees to vote for what their favorite activities were that we did.
Okay.
And I did an activity on the beach where I made everyone, and this is why I'm sharing this, because it's easy,
Sure.
You can do it virtually. Everyone had to bring their favorite inspirational quote or favorite passage that meant something to them. We all stood around the fire and read it out loud and shared why it meant something to us. And I wasn't even going to put that in my book because I was like, this is so simple,
Yeah.
They all voted for that.
Wow.
And I couldn't not leave it out. I titled it More Than S'mores because we had s'mores and stuff. But it's just that meant a lot to them because they were lonely. We were geographically separated. They were feeling isolated. Harvard Business Review pre-COVID.
Sure.
Loneliest workers in America. Being lonely is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day in healthcare costs.
Sure.
And all of that hit me wow. You just have to be courageous enough to Breanna Brown, to show a little bit of vulnerability.
Sure. Well, and I think that, so I'm listening to this and you had me at fire and ocean and beach. So, that was pretty easy right there. Right. But I think that people, nowadays, when I started to realize that 1 in 3 people show up every day engaged in their job and 2 out of 3 people are not engaged in their job. And those are real numbers that are, based on a ton of research from Gallup.
Mm-hmm.
You start thinking about that. I present that to people when I'm speaking around the country and tell somebody that, or if that's the topic, you can feel the resistance in the room. That's not my group, oh, we're awesome, and I'm like, you guys, I totally get it. I'm not here to disagree with you, but somewhere then there's huge companies with everybody disengaged because I rarely run into someone that admits it out loud that, yeah, you know what, I really think 2 out of 3 people are disengaged. What I think is really helpful is the things that you're talking about, don't even cost money, and we're improving engagement of our team. And my book, Growing on Purpose, talks about the connection between, a strong team will then produce a strong customer experience. And so, that's what I think is so awesome about these topics that we're talking about is most of them don't cost money. It doesn't cost money to do what you just said. Start a meeting off with saying, what are you grateful for? Now, full disclosure, for me, it's super awkward to start some of these things. I remember when I had my business and we had 22 people on our team and we tried some of these things. Boy, they're awkward, Amy, right? To say, okay, tell me what you're really thankful for today. And it's just like, oh my gosh, really? Can we just get to my list of stuff and get back to work? So I totally get that you're going to have that. And if you're listening today and that little chunk is talking to you in the back of your head of, oh my gosh, let's just not do this. Totally can not do it. But number one, it doesn't cost anything. And number two, if the statistics that she shared with you are accurate, it does nothing but build up your team. And when you build up your team, then you start to build up your customer's experience and then profit follows. So I appreciate that, Amy, that you're sharing things that, it's not like we got to take them all to Europe for a week and we got to do all these things. Some of these are really small chunks, but they're so meaningful that sometimes, like you said, we almost forget that they're even there. So I really appreciate you sharing those.
Yeah. If I could just add to that.
Yeah, for sure.
As a corporate executive, one of my biggest worries at night was the disengaged employee, for sure. And so I'm really glad you spoke to that. And then the other thing is, let's take what you just said all the way out. Yeah, it's awkward. Yeah, it's cheesy if you've never done it before. Yeah, people might laugh at you, or you might feel like this is kind of cheesy. Just say it.
Yeah.
Have everybody laugh.
Yeah.
Because laughing is a stress reducer anyway, right?
Yeah.
So let's have a little fun. Okay, this is cheesy. Keep doing it. People will love it. They'll prepare. They can't wait for their turn to share after a while. If you just keep going. And in leadership, what happens is they're going to hear that Dan shared he's grateful his wife maybe was just declared cancer-free.
Yep.
They didn't know she had cancer. They didn't know that before.
Exactly.
So guess what? That team member is going to be like, wow, Dan, I didn't know you were going through that. Can I help you with this project? Yeah. They start talking to each other. They start collaborating, and it frees you up as a leader to do your job. And they're making better decisions out there without you having to intervene. Yep.
I love that. And the cool part, like we said, it doesn't cost anything. I mean, these are not like big, huge expenses that we got a budget for. This is purely just writing something down on your agenda for your meeting, get in the habit, or however you do it, get in the habit of going around and doing that. And I totally get it. It is awkward. And when you said, again, full disclosure, when you said standing on the beach with a fire, my first thought was guitar kumbaya. That was exactly first thing in my head, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, man, that's crazy. But the reality is that people do enjoy it. And I think this is what's so hard. If you as the entrepreneur think it's crazy, but everyone else thinks it's a really good idea, now you're forced to live outside of that ego that Amy talked about. And now you have to put other people first. And I think that's the hardest part about being in this situation, is not looking purely for your own benefit, but for the benefit of the team.
And as a leader, I would say it's your responsibility.
Yep. Great point.
You've stepped into that position.
Yep.
It's your responsibility to foster that type of authentic connection and that type of environment. And that's a servant leader.
Yep. And that's so cool. I mean, I think of the servant leadership, model where you invert your org chart, where the leader's on the bottom and, for whatever reason. And I love the fact that in my mind, I think if a leader is supporting everybody on their team and trying to get them to be successful doing their job, when my parents were in the workforce, it was like the boss was barking out orders and everybody kind of catered to exactly what the boss needed. And the whole team was there for the boss. Well, you invert that into today's world, and a leader is there to support their team. Boy, there's way much more success, I think, in doing it that way than trying to live back in the 60s and 70s. So that's so cool that you bring up servant leadership. So
yeah, I've heard it framed as you're their customer service.
Yep. That's and we said there's internal customers. I always tell people there's internal customers and external customers. External customers are what, they buy your product, and the internal customer is your team. And if you don't treat them as well as you treat the external customer, you're going to have major problems moving forward. So exactly. That's so cool. Well, hey, I want to, as we start to come in for a landing today, I want to kind of switch gears, because I love talking to people that were in corporate America, made that shift, because we have a lot of people that are listening that are in that spot. And I tell people every time we talk about this, there's no right or wrong way to do this. This is just one person's way that they did it. So you had mentioned, Amy, that you took about a year of transition for that to happen. Were you busy behind the scenes creating your company, creating your image? Were you busy doing with all that? Or kind of walk us through that, if you would mind.
I'm really glad you're like, this is an individual story, no prescriptions for anyone, because the answer is no, I didn't plan anything. I mean, obviously I planned to leave my job for a year, but I didn't do anything on the side as far as planning for Create Magic at Work. Part of me leaving my job was I just posted something on social media. It was called 3 Ways to Leave Your Job, or 3 Steps to Leaving Your Job. And it's what I did. So the first thing was, I told you I felt like my creativity was being stifled.
Yep.
I figured out a way to last that final year with every morning I woke up and said, how can I help today? How can I help?
Sure.
How can I help my employees? How can I help my supervisors? How can I help?
Yep.
The second thing was I made a list, and it's called the Dare to Dream list. And it was everything that I wanted to do in my life if I never had to collect a paycheck again.
Okay.
Which isn't realistic for people, right? So, but I did it. I'm like, envision your life. I teach this. I do this as an exercise with people. If you never have to get a paycheck again, what would you do? Write 5 things down. And then when they're done, it's like, here's the punchline. You have to commit to doing 1 or 2 of those things and give yourself a deadline.
Sure.
Yep. And then the third thing is make a plan. And my plan was basically I was leaving and I knew I wanted to. I'm like, I didn't have that big of a plan.
Hasta luego, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But I knew I wanted to leave my employees feeling really great. I wanted to leave on top because I wanted to prove that all of these things work in the workplace.
Sure.
And I left my office one day when I made that plan, and I was in a store and there was a magnet that just shot out at me, and it said leap and the net will appear. And so I just got the chills and I grabbed it, and I have it on my refrigerator to this day. Just leap and the net will appear. And so I left and I wrote my book on all the activities, and I knew I wanted to re-inject myself into the corporate space in a way that was connecting, fostering authentic human connection. So that's how I ended up executive coaching, UC Berkeley, Executive Coaching Institute. And then I became SQ21 certified, spiritual intelligence certified for the workplace.
Wow. And that's so cool. Thank you so much for being vulnerable, because I love the fact that everybody's story is a little different. And for the people listening that are like, man, I wish I could, I just encourage you to, carry that through a little bit more. We don't suggest people quit their jobs and then the next day start figuring out, well, what should I do now? However you do the transition, if you do the transition, it's completely up to you. But, there are cool stories out there like Amy's, that it's like she knew that there was something. I'm assuming, I shouldn't even assume, but I'm assuming something was missing in corporate America for you. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was just, I needed that creativity outlet, and I needed that. I felt like I was always shoving these activities into the time allotted rather than being here for everybody to share them.
So let me challenge you just a little bit, because there's probably somebody listening going, well, why didn't you just change jobs if you wanted the creativity? Why didn't you just change jobs? Any response to that question? Yeah,
for me, I didn't want to have to answer to anyone anymore.
Okay. Yep.
And it's not for everyone. Entrepreneurship is a roller coaster ride. So you have to buckle up when you get on it. And there's a place for everybody on the planet, and we need everybody where you are, right? So it's not for everyone. But for me, it was, I didn't want to have to answer to anyone anymore. And I'll tell you, Dave, one of my goals when I left my job, I've shared this before, was I'm just going to sleep in my same bed like 30 days in a row, because I traveled so much. I was hotels, airplanes,
Yeah.
And that was an actual goal I had. Wow. I'm going to sleep in my same bed 30 days in a row. Period.
She didn't say not get out of bed, okay? So don't misunderstand her. She wasn't in there for a month straight, okay? It was just the same bed 30 nights. Wow.
Exactly.
So cool. Yeah.
So, everyone goes through different seasons in their life too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And maybe you're in a season that you are at work and you're at a job that you need for now, and that's okay. Yep. Not everyone has to take this leap into entrepreneurship or starting your own company to fulfill your life purpose.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and that's really wise when somebody's able to realize that what they're doing now in their life is not fulfilling their life's purpose. That takes a lot of courage to say that. It takes a lot of self-reflection to be able to get to that point. And I think there's probably a lot of people that just go through life with their 50 weeks a year, and they live for their 2 weeks of vacation, and they live with their 2.5 kids and their half a dog. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I just know that if that's you and you're thinking, man, I think there's more, that's why we're here, to be able to just allow that to percolate inside you a little bit, maybe fan that flame, whatever it is for you. But that's why we're here, is to help, people in that situation. So a couple questions, I'm going to let you go. What would Amy's tip of the week be for everyone listening?
Oh my gosh. The first, I'm just going to share, I don't know, I'm just going to share what comes up right away.
Absolutely.
So I share your breadth of time perception, knowing that your life is extremely profound. And we talk about, so we're on the polarity show, right? So walk away, or just understand from listening to this that yes, your life matters. Your life is extremely profound. You can send a ripple effect that makes a difference. And at the same time, you're a tiny piece of the history of the universe. Mm-hmm. So just sit with that a little bit. That's when you think about leadership and what your impact is.
Yeah. And it just, now I never thought of this until you just said that. So I'm just going to say it. You can't unwrite your book. You've already written your book. It's out there. It'll be out there forever. You can't unwrite that. I mean, so I think that's so cool. Everybody here has such an important value, such an important reason that they're here. And like you mentioned, maybe it's your legacy and you're questioning why you are here. I'm just encouraging people, even if it's on your drive home, even if it's at your walk at night, whatever, take some time and just kind of sit with those questions, because that's so fulfilling to be able to know why you're here, and fulfilling to understand what legacy you want to leave and start preparing for that. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah. So the weird question that I always like to ask is, what's one thing that most people listening wouldn't know about you that you feel comfortable sharing?
Oh, I like this. I can't remember her last name, but Dr. Carol from Stanford. This is a cool leadership thing you can do. If you really, you start introducing yourself, or you share in front of other people to be vulnerable, like we talked about this whole episode. If you really knew me, you would know. You can say it like that. So I'm just gonna, if you really knew me, you would know that I went through one of the hardest times of my life during the spring and summer. And if we go over the past 18 months of the pandemic, in an SQ summit I was in, they asked, what did you lose and what did you gain? It's interesting for me is I throughout the pandemic, I lost my agency. And I felt like I lost my independence to almost make wise and compassionate decisions for myself, or to access my higher self to help make decisions. And I gained it back at the same time, because when we got hit with the pandemic, everybody went viral. As a leader, myself, who's a lifelong learner, inundated with workshops. And this is how you should handle this, and this is how you should do. And I got stuck in this mode of like, just getting told what to do in my life. And I mean, that's skill 16 in SQ, is being able to listen to your own internal wisdom. And I lost it and I got it back. So if I'm sharing anything vulnerable today, that's it. And it was quite a journey. I explain it as if I went through a dark forest and I came out of the clearing at the other end. So
wow. Well, we're glad you did. Welcome to the other side.
To the light.
The water's so good and enjoyable. So enjoy that. So good. Thanks for sharing that. So Amy, if this, resonated with somebody, as I know that there's somebody listening, at least one person that's just like, wow, I never heard of this before. And it really is kind of compelling them to take a next step. What do you think the next step is? And what would be the best way for people to connect with you?
So createmagicatwork.net is my website. And it's got the two sides to it. You can go, if you don't want to talk to me at all, you can just get some fun tools on there to do interactive activities with your employees. Cool. It's under tools on my website. Or if you are curious how you would score on the SQ21, just click the work with me on createmagicatwork.net. But I love LinkedIn. I'm Amy Lynn Durham under LinkedIn, and I post a lot of fun stuff on LinkedIn. I post a weekly workplace message for everyone. Cool. With my journal prompt card deck I authored. It's an affirmation. Sure. It's an affirmation and two cards. Two questions meant for you for your work or career, kind of that comes from the universe each week.
Cool. Awesome.
So, yeah.
Good. Well, thank you. Oh my gosh, this has been so good. Congrats also on your new podcast. I want to make sure and plug that. So brand new for you. I think you're like 4 or 5 episodes in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. So people, if you're a podcaster, obviously you listen to this. So jump on over to that and check that out. But again, each week we talk about finding ways to help, move things forward in your life. This is a great way, whether it's the SQ, whether it's the EQ, whatever it is that you feel, will scratch the itch, so to speak. I just encourage you to reach out to Amy and connect, whether it's get her book, whether it's jump on and get some tools on her website, listen to the podcast, or, connect with her on LinkedIn, and she'll be happy to help. So again, thank you so much for all this information. I took a ton of notes like I always do, and now I got to do something with these notes, because you said you don't just learn, you got to do something with them. So thank you again so much, and I appreciate all your insight, and look forward to learning more from you.
Thank you, Dave. Hope we sent some magic to everyone.
Oh, that's right, moon water.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Enjoy.
Thank you.